what is coaching?
I like to think about coaching and explain coaching by going back to the original use of the word coach. And if you think several centuries ago, coaches were a vehicle or a capsule that was pulled by a horse and a cart.
They seem to have that confidence and they're so eloquent.
But it's certainly not where I've engaged excellent coaches. It is certainly not.
60% of employees would leave organizations because of a bad manager.
Well, today I thought I'd get some perspectives from these two amazing entrepreneurs and business owners about coaching. And I suppose I always want to ask this question of coaches. One, because I've seen the incredible impact that coaching has, but two, I feel like a lot of people don't really understand this. Like, in your opinion, if you had like one or two words or a couple of sentences, like what is coaching? Like what actually is it? What, in your perspective?
James, I'm going to struggle to answer your question in one or two words. It is absolutely not my forte.
Okay.
But if you'll indulge me with a few more words, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I mean, we'll put on the timer. See how we go.
Not my forte. Look, it's actually a question we do get asked a lot. And I think there's some misconceptions about what coaching is. I also think there is a lot of definitions. And so some of the peak bodies have definitions and they do vary. So there are lots of definitions around coaching. I like to think about coaching and explain coaching by going back to the original use of the word coach. And if you think several centuries ago, coaches were a vehicle or a capsule that was pulled by a horse and a cart. And so I like to think of coaching like those horse and cart, which was really about getting a person from where they are to where they want to be. And so as a coach, it's my job to sit with someone and work out where they are and what is it and they need and where do they want to be. And that might be, they might need support in cutting through some complexity, navigating some stakeholder or relationship issue, or managing change. Regardless of what it is that they want or need, my role as a coach is really about that process and that journey from where they are and where they want to be. So that's often how I think about coaching.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Sam?
Yeah, I think I want to pose it maybe this way. Have you ever been in a situation where you've gone for biggest break of your life, you got a promotion that you've been really working hard towards, and now you find yourself in the room with your peers, and in that room everyone seems to say the right things and say it at the right moment. They seem to have that confidence and they're so eloquent, and you kind of looking in the room, you're thinking, oh no, you just feel a little bit overstressed. Or perhaps you're going for an interview job, for a job, and you're well prepared, you know your stuff, but you get in the interview there and the questions kind of, the moment you want to start answering the questions, you get a little bit nervous and then you just get stuck. The words seems to fail you somehow. Or perhaps you're in a meeting and people seem to have the brightest ideas. Everyone is confident. They're sharing their ideas, their thoughts. And then you leave the meeting without having said a word. 2 hours later, you're thinking, all the thoughts seems to flow just 2 hours after.
2 hours later, you're like, this would have been brilliant.
Where were you, Gabriel? Where were you? So in those moments, really, that's why coaching can be quite helpful, because it helps you to really, the word that you probably see a lot being thrown around with coaching is, are you stuck? And it helps you get unstuck. But it just cracks open those sort of opportunities, and it helps you in terms of the shift in your mindset. It gives you with some strong skills, I suppose, that you might be lacking in the moment that you're struggling with. So whatever the situation would be, whether for interview for a job, whether you want him to level up, or just for various reasons.
Yeah.
That didn't come out right.
No, that's good. And so I suppose like both of you are basically sharing analogies or thoughts around like, how do I get from where I am to where I need to go? But in a practical sense, like what does that look like? And I just frame what I'm thinking just to maybe hopefully help. It's like, I feel like when you have a coach, Sam, I know in another episode you mentioned, talking about Serena Williams and how, she needed a coach, and she's reflected that was a big level up for her. I think in a sports sense, that's reasonably easy to conceptualize. Like, a tennis player needs to work on their tennis game, and there's all sorts of different elements to that. What's that equivalent in a workplace, or particularly in a professional services kind of area, where you're not swinging around a racket or a bat or whatever sport people are playing? Like, what's the kind of skill sets or things that you are helping people improve on?
So I think that's really interesting, James, to looking at that sporting analogy and saying, well, how is that applicable back into a professional work environment? But I am just gonna, I do think it's important to understand that sporting analogy, because that then helps, I think, to translate that back into the workplace a little in a stronger way. So we take an elite athlete. So an elite athlete wants to get a coach because they want to be faster, stronger, better. It's not that they don't know how to run. They don't want you to teach them how to run. They want you to be faster, stronger, more efficient, and better. And they want to win. They want the competitive edge. And so you, as a coach in that sporting context, you would be working on what are the things that they do really well and sharpening those. And you would be looking at what are the things that you're not being efficient with, or you need to be smarter about, and they're working on those things. So you take that back into a professional context. You are employing people into your organization that have skills and knowledge and talent. What a coach does is they're not necessarily teaching them those technical skills. They are teaching them how to harness them and how to work smarter and how to be more efficient and how to be productive. So you're tapping into what's already existing within that person, and you are helping them sharpen or enhance or strengthen that to be more effective. And so I think that's important that they are very similar in terms of the mechanisms. So what you need as a coach is a really sound theoretical or evidence-based underpinning to say, well, what are the mechanisms we then use in that journey or that movement? And that's where there's understanding how to ask those critical questions, assessing where people are at. So a coach needs to be able to understand where someone is right now. They need to be able to think about goal setting and planning and working with the individual around that, and then helping navigate the path to get there. But what a coach adds in is the accountability. And so you put all of that together, what you're working on specifically, whether it be clarity and complexity, strategic execution, stakeholder relationships, risk identification, whatever it is that person needs at that moment, it's still the same mechanisms and processes and underpinnings that help you get that person there.
I think that's a very practical question. Like, coaching is understood in the context of sports. What about when it comes to me personally? I'm not an athlete, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things, Michelle, that you mentioned as you were answering the question was the importance and the value that you place on evidence-based things. And for me, I find that really interesting, because a lot of the times when I watch, coaches on YouTube or different places, a lot of the stuff they say sounds very vague and not anchored in evidence. I guess a polite way of putting it. So can you sort of dive, I'd be really interested in hearing you dive into what does it mean when you say evidence-based, and why, like, how does that kind of apply to coaching?
Yeah, that's a great question about what's the evidence around coaching. The one statistic or evidence that really we cannot ignore is the one that states that 60% of employees would leave organization because of a bad manager.
So almost 2 out of 3.
That's
Just
a
off
lot
sort
of
of
people.
free, yeah.
That's a lot of people who join organization, but they actually leave a manager.
Yeah.
So when you think about that statistic, it actually speaks to the need to have our leaders engaging in a coaching atmosphere, because when leaders have been coached, or like they're coachable, they create an environment where people want to thrive, people are more productive, and the performance of that team improves. And that creates a culture where people focus on the business problems rather than people problems.
I really like that. So that statement. So people join an organization but leave a manager.
Yeah. I think it's important though also to understand that gives us a really great opportunity to understand where we need as organization, where we need to invest our resources in helping in building the managers. The reality is managers are faced on a day-to-day, especially the middle managers. They're operational and needing to be strategic and needing to be project managers, and they're wearing so many hats throughout the day. No wonder they then have that much influence on the team. So by actually putting a lot of resources in equipping them, and coaching is another way of doing that, that actually means that then the success rate becomes higher. Then you have more people being more productive, people wanting to stay there. We know that there is a strong linkage between teams who have a coachable manager and that the engagement score is high by about 15%.
I think also adding on to that is around, and it goes to your point, James, around, I think there's a lot of people who think that coaching is a very robust, results-driven, future-focused activity.
Yeah.
And I think there is a misconception that coaching is a feel-good conversation or a motivational kind of pickup. And if you are not engaging coaches that use a strong evidence base in terms of their coaching methodology, I think you can tend to have it be a conversation and a motivational pick me up and feel good, which is just not the intent of coaching. So there are lots of different frameworks that exist in coaching, and there's really, well-known concepts like GROW, which is just frameworks in which you can work with in coaching. I use GROW a lot. And then there's lots of tools you can add on to coaching. So we're certified Gallup Strengths coaches, and they are sort of the vehicle that we use often to have conversations with people using those coaching frameworks. There's a lot of underpinnings of psychology, and then there's other frameworks. So I think having a coach that can work out what is the best framework to use given the situation is important, because if you're investing from a business owner perspective, if you're investing your money into a coaching culture, you want a coaching coach that is going to have that mindset of results driven, future focused, and move away from that concept that it is this warm, light, fuzzy. And I think that's what happens when you don't have coaches. It is a really robust process, coaching, and I do a lot of coaching, but I've also received a lot of coaching, and at times it's not a very comfortable process.
Right.
I will always walk away with more clarity, or some steps that I'm going to take to help me get that clarity. But it's certainly not where I've engaged excellent coaches. It is certainly not, I feel a sense of discomfort. And for me, that is their role. Because I can find colleagues or family that make me feel good. So when I'm in pain for my own coach, I really want someone that's going to push me to challenge my thinking, help me become unstuck, and get me to where it is that I want to go. So I think that's really important as well.